with James Gunn and Peter Safran giving us a new slate of DC movies either today or February the 1st, I would like to discuss the possible scenarios that we're going to see within this new slate. Now, we will briefly mention some of the movies that they've already announced, that have been announced, that DC are working on, but I am mainly going to focus on the new movies that could possibly come out, even though we are going to make a reference very quickly for the movies that have already been announced, which comes to my first thing that I'm going to talk about, which is worst scenario. Now, I'm going to cover four things. I'm going to cover worst scenario. I'm going to cover a possible slate that I believe that could be. I'm going to talk about the best scenario. And then I'm going to come up with somewhere in the middle of a possible reality that actually could happen that's going to blend some of these things together. Okay? So, the worst possible case scenario is if all we get is the mentioning of the movies that we already know are coming. If all we get is him announcing Shazam, Flash, Aquaman 2, and Blue Beetle, I think people are going to be very upset, even if he even mentions Superman and maybe gives us a title of Superman. I don't think that's going to be enough. I think people are going to be very dissatisfied. And if I was him, I would advise against this. Now, he's a grown man. He does what he wants to do. But, I'll be praying for him when it comes to the comments he's going to get on Twitter if that's the case. Now, I don't think that's the most possible scenario. Now, this is the most possible slate that I can think of, and then we'll get into the one I really hope for, and then maybe we'll blend the two for a possible reality that, see what we can actually get. So, the possible slate that I could see coming, okay, is the movies that are already announced. He'll bring up those because you want to amp those things up. You want to get people familiarized and excited for the movies that are coming. Okay, but the next one that I could see is actually the Superman movie that he's already announced, has already talked about. Then I could see Peacemaker 2. Now, I'm bringing up Peacemaker 2 for two different reasons. The first reason is to answer the question, is this a full reboot or is this somewhere in between? I think if this is a full reboot, the reason we could still maybe have Peacemaker is you could use it as an explanation about why this past DC universe is dead. You could, in that show, give, John Cena's character a proper ending, and then, move on. We could have something exciting with maybe him and Batmite, but, that's just my nerd theories coming out. I'm going to hold those at bay. The second possible scenario is, hey, this isn't a full reboot. We're going to mix and match. And if that's the case, then I could see Peacemaker continuing on as normal, not making too much of a big deal about it. If the second scenario is, where we're heading, then I do see us getting a sequel to Suicide Squad. Now, Suicide Squad did not do good in the box office. We can blame that a lot on HBO Max and the different things that were going on with COVID. But I do think that movie was well received. I do think a lot of people did watch it on HBO Max. And I do think if it came out in theaters again, the sequel, I think more people would be willing to go see the movie. And I do think it's a possible slate option if they're not doing a full reboot, but more so a mix and a match. Now, the next thing I see coming is a Green Lantern show. We already know they're talking about working on a show, and they've gotten rid of the old cast they had, and now they're trying to work on a more Jon Stewart-centric show, and I still think that's probably possible. I don't know if it's going to be an Earth-based show or a space, adventure epic, but whatever it is, I do see them trying to put out another DC show, especially if they're not doing Peacemaker. Now, the next one I think is possible is Wonder Woman. I think either with Gal Gadot or a new Wonder Woman, I do feel like we're going to see a new movie with Wonder Woman. I think the other movie that was poorly received, it was only on HBO Max. I think that they could have a new script, a new story, a new director. They'll push that movie out, and I do think it'll probably be with a new Wonder Woman. And I do think that's probably the last movie they're going to mention. I have a feeling they're not going to necessarily mention a new Batman, even though their priority is supposed to be to fulfill their Trinity. I do think the possible slate, they will not mention Batman. I think they're either they're going to lie and they're going to use, Matt Reeves' Batman in their new universe, or they're going to let that Batman have some time before they put out the new Batman. Now, let's talk about the best possible scenario. This is the one that I really hope happens, and so we're just going to have to see if it happens or if it doesn't. Now, the best possible scenario to me, of course, is bringing up Superman. First things first, don't even, we can acknowledge very quickly the older movies, but hey, Superman is the focus. Superman's what we're doing, and maybe even getting deeper into the story about what we're going to see with Superman, and we'll go from there. The next thing I hope happens, I do hope that Jon Stewart Green Lantern show actually happens. But what I also hope happens, I hope we actually get a Green Lantern movie with Hal Jordan. I think someone like Chris Pratt would be a great Hal Jordan, and because they have those connections in that relationship, I think having those two, the show and the movie, could be something that could work really well together, and the show could set up the movie, and we would love it. And I think it would be great. I think Chris Pratt would be a great casting for that. Just putting my fan casting out there, I think you'd be a great addition to the team. The next thing I see happening is a Wonder Woman movie. I think there does need to be a Wonder Woman movie. I think there will be a Wonder Woman movie no matter what, if it's, my guess or not. But I actually do want to see another Wonder Woman movie, and I'll be pretty excited to see it. The next thing I do hope happens is I hope we get a Batman and Robin movie. A good way to separate, a good way to separate the screw you trade, screw you! A good possible way to differentiate themselves from the Matt Reeves Batman movies and their Batman movies is by bringing in Robin. Now, I would possibly be interested in having a Tim Drake Robin. Now, part of me doesn't want that because I do like the idea of having a young Nightwing and making sure he's young, but I also want Jason Todd, all those different characters. But I do think having a Tim Drake Robin is the way to go. Now, I do hope they do not go with the era of Tim Drake that they have been using recently. I think they have honestly been ruining the character for political gain and political points, and we're here to make stories and tell good stories. We should not be here to be pushing, political messaging in these films. I hope they stay away from that going forward. I think they know that those things don't work, and you're missing out on 30 years of great storytelling with this character to, go with something that has not been working. And him, being a gay character has not been working. I think they need to go back to letting him just be the character that he was. And so I hope that's the route they go, which goes into possible shows. I do hope they come out with a Nightwing show. I think a Nightwing show would be awesome. I think it would, compare to something like Daredevil, you want to compete with Marvel, give us Nightwing. Nightwing would be a great juxtaposition. Can't talk. A great alternative to something like MCU's Daredevil. People are aggravated with what the MCU is doing. Hey, we got Nightwing. Nightwing is DC's basically Daredevil, but he's a Daredevil of hope. I think, we should maybe look at that and make a show. And I think it could be affordable. I think it's something they could do, and I hope they do it. The next thing I could see actually happening is I can actually see a Green Arrow style, like John Wick style movie coming out. I think James Gunn and them should be open to doing superhero movies that aren't super expensive. I think Warner Brothers actually needs to make some movies that aren't just ungodly expensive, but make sure they're movie quality. And I think having a Green Arrow, John Wick style epic action movie would actually be pretty cool. And I think it could be done. And I think John Wick style filmmaking would be a great addition for something like Green Arrow. And I think we would really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. Now, the last thing that I hope happens, and I really do hope they present us a character that they're going to introduce into the DC universe, but they have mentioned that they're going to make some games a part of the DC universe. I really do hope that they introduce a brand new character as a single player in a video game that we get to experience. A AAA single player game, maybe done by Rocksteady, who knows, but a game that's going to take a couple years to come out, and maybe in the slate with something like that, because to be able to have a character's narrative inside a game and let that play out instead of them having a movie, I think would be kind of interesting, and I think it could work if they pick the right character and they give us the right opportunities with that character. Now, what's the reality? I talked about the worst case scenario. I talked about the possible slate. I talked about what I wanted. What could be the reality of bringing all those together? What could I see actually happening tomorrow? What I see actually happening tomorrow is Superman movie. I think what happens tomorrow is a Green Lantern show with Jon Stewart. I do see Wonder Woman happening as a movie. I do see a possible Batman game series. Now, I mentioned I wanted a Batman and Robin movie, but I could see them, instead of making a bunch of Batman movies that are supposed to compete with their other Batman, what they may do is they may use a big-time actor and let him be a secondary character in other people's films, but then let him lead his own video game. And I think nowadays a lot of actors might be open to something like that. And I think it could be a opposite way of going, instead of trying to have two Batman on screen to get our attention and our eyeballs. And then the last thing that I could see is having Peacemaker 2. Now, whatever that means, I don't know, but I do see a possible way to end off the old DC universe with a Peacemaker 2 to end it all off, and, let James Gunn kill his toys with some dignity. I could see that happening. And so, anyway, that's what I think that maybe they'll end it off with. So, I don't think they're going to give us a lot. That's why the reality, I have a very small list of things. I have about 5 things to bring up, because I don't think they're going to give us a lot for the first 3 years. I think they're going to push out these movies that they already have. And then I think after that, well, I think it's going to be a slow roll. And then as they start building momentum, we're going to start having more movies, and we're going to go faster and faster. But there's just the reality of expectations and the fact of financially, DC and Warner Brothers do not have enough money to be bankrolling all these high budget films to the get-go. And so I think they're going to start slow. I think they're going to try to make really great films, and then we'll go from there to see what the future is. So anyway, guys, this is my possible theories. This is my guesses of what could happen. I'm very curious what you guys think. Please comment down below. Give me some of your comments and your feedback of what you think is going to happen. If you disagree with some of the things I said, definitely let me know in the comments. I'm all good with feedback. And yeah, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you. Have a good one.